Yeah, so for everybody online and at home, I'm passing around a piece of fiber optic cable that has 96 strands. It's encased in epoxy. And the reason for that, by the way, is those strands are very fragile. And if you were to break one off and get in your eye, somebody would be making an emergency room visit. And so I've heard about Rotarians and how dangerous and delicate you are. And so I wanted to be careful, which, by the way, I promise I won't make very many Rotary jokes, but I did get a chance to, well, let me start. 25 years ago, a friend of mine, Mike McCauley, invited me to a Rotary meeting. And I don't remember if it was here or not. Tom and I were just debating that. And I remember looking around the room and thinking, wow, these are the movers and shakers of ELKR. These are the people that get things done. It just so happens that Art DCO was there, and, growing up, see Art DCO's name on every Sesame Street or whatever. And so, I was like, wow, I was just in so much in awe. So I remember thinking, if I could ever be part of that group, that would be amazing. And so I have my membership application here. And to be honest with you, I've been going Kiwanis Rotary. And I know, right? And there's two things that have sold me. One is the food. You all eat good. I've been here 2 weeks in a row. And we had bag lunches at the Kiwanis meeting last week or a couple weeks ago. But really what sold me is Brianna. I've worked with Brianna for a couple of years. I don't know however long at Horizon Education Alliance. And you guys will take her. I know you'll take me. No, actually, that came out way wrong. That came out, what I meant to say was she set the bar really high. She is such a rock star, and she really inspired me with what she was doing at Horizon Education Alliance. We're sorry to see her go, but happy to see Rihanna Tolson. So anyways, I do have my membership application right here. It's not filled out, but now that Brianna came up, I'm going to work on it when I go back to the office after my fair shift tonight. Yeah. Okay, so I promise that this is not going to be an infomercial. This is not about surf. I believe genuinely that this is a transformational time in history. And so what I'm going to try to do in the next 4 hours, 24 minutes, in the next little bit, I'm going to try to convince you that fiber optic broadband is transformational and that the time is now. So I know that like Surf is just one fiber optic provider in the community. If you live in Granger, there's a company called Metronet that's building out fiber. If you live in ELKR, Frontier, it took them 100 years, but they're finally getting around to building fiber. They just had to wait. Is anybody here from Frontier? I hope. So, but in order to embrace the change, we really have to change our mindset. And that's really what this presentation is about. But my marketing person that wrote that bio that Tom read wouldn't let me off the hook if I didn't do the quick infomercial. So I have to do the quick infomercial just to tell you a little bit about Surf. So we have 2 offices in here in ELKR, one on Middlebury Street and one on Waterfall Drive across from the fire station and Social Security office. I had no idea how much traffic the Social Security office got until I look out and see the line every day. It's amazing. We have about 200 team members. We have, I think it's 6 offices: ELKR, LaPorte, Troy Grove, Illinois, Coal City, Illinois. We're opening one in Rock Falls, Illinois, Byron Center, Michigan, and in Fowlerville, Michigan. We have about 200 team members, they said. We just hit the mark of 20,000 customers, and we have fiber optic cable in front of 54,000 customers. We also have about 600 fixed wireless towers across the 3 states that serve about another 11,000 customers. So my history, my degree is in electrical engineering. I have a degree in management and electrical engineering. My first job out of college was working at Goshen College. And in 1991, I brought a 56K internet connection into the Goshen College campus for the whole campus. Everybody to share. I mean, can you imagine how that has changed since 1991 and now? Another cool thing that most people don't know about Surf is that we're the 4th largest telecom provider in Indiana and Illinois for schools. So, you know, the big ones like AT&T and Comcast and Frontier, and then Surf is right below it. So we're really proud of that. That means we, in terms of revenue and school served, we're the fourth largest taken care of, and almost all of Northern Indiana schools work with us. Another big thing which supports all the conduit that you've seen around in the ground. If you've seen this in ELKR, that's us. And I'm sorry we messed up your yard, and we will fix it. Promise. But anyways, as of right now, we have $105 million of fiber optic construction happening in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. And the reason that we were able to do that is because of our financial backing by Bain Capital. So I believe that fiber optic is the great equalizer. Like if you live in rural places like Wanata or Bourbon, if you have access to fiber optic broadband, you have access to the same resources as people in bigger cities like Chicago or San Francisco or whatever. And so we believe, and we saw it during COVID, right? Like all of a sudden the world just shut down and people went home. And I remember that day so well. I was flying back from a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, and I'm walking through JFK, and there's basically announcements going off that said, if you don't miss your flight, you're screwed. I mean, it wasn't like that, but that's basically what they said, because the flights are done. And while I was waiting for my flight, I got a call from Steve Tallheimer. Does he remember this group? There he is. It's from Steve and Jason Inman. They said, we're getting ready to send our kids home, and we have to figure out how to get internet to the people that are underserved. And so we worked with the IT staff at ELKR. We turned up 8 wireless hotspots in the parking lots of schools so that the kids that either couldn't afford broadband or didn't have access to broadband could pull into one of these schools and work from their car or whatever, just to get access to broadband. And so the whole COVID pandemic really elevated for us, and probably for you all too, when you suddenly had to go work at home and figure out that traditional broadband wasn't going to cut it anymore. And what I mean by that is we have all adjusted to and become acclimated to the fact that we get pretty decent download most of the time, and we get pretty unreliable upload all of the time. And when you go to a new work world, which is the Zoom conferences and all that kind of stuff, you need reliable upload and download. But on top of that, you need low latency. So the jitter and all the delays and stuff that we've become accustomed to. And so it introduced a whole new language. Like, I can't tell you how many times a day I say, hey, Frank, you're muted. You ever seen that? Like, all day long, Frank, you're muted. They need to press the mute button. And then there's a picture of South Bend Community Schools who did the same thing with the Wi-Fi in the school buses. So what is fiber? This is my favorite story. Some of you in this crowd might get it. Some people don't get this joke. This is true, by the way. I was working at the LaPorte County Fair 2 weeks ago. I love, as CEO, I love going into the community and talking to our customers and hearing what's going on. A lot of the conversations revolve around, when is this going to be done? And when are you going to fix my landscaping? But I really dig talking to people and talking to customers. But this little old lady comes. She said, can you tell me about your fiber? And I started talking to her, and she said, wow, is it better than Metamucil? I really didn't know where to go from there. So I had a junior, like one of our customer service reps sitting next to me. I said, can you help Martha with this? I'm going to go ahead and talk to somebody. So our fiber is quite a bit better than Metamucil. So what this shows is that fiber optic is unlimited. And I wrote out this really cool description of the radio frequency spectrum and bandwidth, and I was going to get super geeky and technical, and I decided I better not. But I want to give just a quick, I want to get into the physics of it just for a quick second, because it's going to help you understand why I think fiber optic and broadband is so important. So do you guys remember 56K modems?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you remember what came before that? Yeah, AOL, yeah, all that. So before 56K was 19.2. Before 19.2 was 9600. Before 9600 was 24. Do you guys remember all that? And that annoying modem sound? Yeah. So the thing about that is a telephone line has a maximum capacity of 3,000. So the initial modem service was 2,400, basically 3,000. And then innovation happened and they figured out how to cram twice as much over a phone line to go from 2,400 to 4,800. Then they figured out how to do it again to 9,600. Then they figured out how to do it again to 19.2. Then they figured out how to do it again to 56. And that's where it ended. The 56K is the absolute maximum capacity of a phone line. They've done all the black magic they can, and they're done. 56K is it. So why that is relevant is because then they move to digital subscriber line, which is a different technology over copper lines. And that's the DSL that we had for a while around here. Some of you maybe still do. The maximum capacity they've been able to harness out of that is 100 megabits. So way faster than 56K, but it's still limited and it won't go faster. The physics of it won't allow it to go faster unless there's some new black magic that doesn't exist today. So then, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to retread. You're right on the way. You need to understand this is on solid core pump. As in one solid thing, and how they're delivering that is by electronic impulses. That's how all of this is.
Sounds like a radio guy. That's it. That was the physics part of the explanation I was getting into, the speed of light over copper and the performance factor and all that stuff, but I decided to but that's exactly right. And so then the next technology that many of you probably have is cable. And the cable is basically copper, just like Anthony said. And so today in our market, the cable companies operate at 1.2 gigabytes, which is still crazy fast compared to DSL and phone. But what you probably know is that you get really decent download, but the upload is kind of poor. And the reason for that is because that cable has a maximum capacity as well. And while the cable company needs to deliver to you internet, they also need to deliver to you the 4 bazillion channels that you get. And so that takes capacity. And since that cable has a finite amount of capacity and they have to use some of it for video, you're kind of limited in terms of what you can do. It's generally believed by the industry, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm definitely not dissing any of the cable providers in the market, but it's generally believed that 10 gigabytes is the maximum capacity for cable. After that, it'll be kind of like DSL and kind of like phone. You've hit the limit, you can't cram any more through, that's what it is. Well, guess what? Fiber optic uses light instead of electrical. And there's essentially an infinite range of lights that could be pushed through the fiber optic cable. So what that means is that fiber is future. And it is not limited, it's currently limited only by the technology that we have available. And technology will continue to evolve. So why is the time now? The time is now, for one, because COVID spurred us to action. Like when the world shut down, the pandemic happened, broadband was put under a spotlight that it's never been before, but it's remarkably similar to another time in US history that I recently learned about. I wasn't alive during this time. Maybe some of you were, I don't know, I'm not gonna call any names. So in the 30s, there was this effort called the Rural Electrification Act of the United States. And basically the government said, we need to figure out how to get electricity to every home in the US. And so the way to do that is to subsidize. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but there is hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of government subsidies going into broadband and primarily going into fiber optic. The interesting thing about the 1930s that I learned about, I never would have thought about it, is that when farmers got electricity for the first time, They had no idea how to use it. They didn't even know what to do with it. So the US government created a training program to teach farmers and rural Americans how to use electric mixers and heaters and washing machines and things that we take for granted. Those were all so innovative in the 1930s that they had to send somebody around to train them. And I think the exact same thing is going to happen with fiber optic broadband. And so what I want you to imagine is a world where your internet connection is no longer a limiting factor for whatever it is that you want to do. And I was talking to, in my small group at church, I have a doctor friend, and he was telling me that there are technical innovations happening that will allow every cell in the human body to be monitored over a network. The reason that's really not evolved yet is because there isn't enough bandwidth in the world or in the US to support that in any kind of scale. But imagine a future where you have so much bandwidth in your house that your doctor can monitor every cell in your body and say, hey, that one's starting to act like cancer. We better take a look at it. Or whatever I don't make it up. This is the future. And this is a time where we can think about what the future is, what the future could be. A really cool example that I talk about is in the Atlanta airport, which I fly through a lot. Have you ever noticed in Atlanta airport, there's little colored lights on the front of the trash cans? This is not a bandwidth thing, it's just a cool use of technology, but it's kind of the innovation that happens. So, in Elkhart County, does anybody work for Elkhart County here? Okay, so they drive around and unlock the doors in the restrooms at the parks, and they drive around and lift the lid and look at the trash can to see if there's trash to empty it. Well, in the Atlanta airport, the trash cans tell the smart trash system which trash cans need to be emptied, and they dispatch people to go pick up the trash on a route that's optimized for the trash cans that need to be emptied. It's a cool use of technology, but it happened because of innovation. This is our footprint for SURF in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. This is kind of where we feel like we're going to be bringing transformation. I love telling this part of the story. This is Steve Jobs, and this is one of my favorite quotes. The ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. And our marketing people put in, of course, we're leading the way to change the world. My favorite slide in the whole thing, because who doesn't like to show off their grandkids? So this is Miles. Miles just turned 6 months old. And the guy that invited me to the first Rotary meeting, Mike McCauley in 1990 something, used to tease me about having a shoe phone. He used to take his shoe off and say, someday we're going to make phone calls from my shoe. And I know we're all laughing, but now we're all carrying around this phone that's infinitely more powerful than the computers that I had when I was in college. So here's the thing. My oldest kid, Miles' dad, actually, Josh, was born in 1995. My youngest kid, Noah, who just got his driver's license. He's praying for me and him. This is a quick side story. So my wife drives a Tesla. And if any of you have kids that are learning to drive, learning to drive in a Tesla is not ideal. Because the Tesla tells you where cars are around you. And he developed this really bad habit of not looking in the mirrors. Because the Tesla says, oh, there's a car over there. Oh, there's a car over there. Don't change lanes. Well, his Jeep doesn't do that. But the horn does. Anyways, so here's the thing. Miles was born in 2022. My son Josh was born in 1995. And my son Noah was born in 2007. He just got his driver's license. So when my son Josh was born and we would go somewhere, he would take his little tablet and we'd walk out to the car and we would get about halfway to the car and he would lose Wi-Fi. And they would throw a hissy fit because he couldn't watch YouTube videos about playing video games, which is really crazy. Watching a video about playing video games, I just don't get it, but whatever. So Josh, my son Josh, knows a world that's not always connected. And because of that, he's wired slightly differently than my son Noah, who was born in 2007, the same time as the Apple iPhone was released. Noah doesn't know a word that's not always connected. Noah's first reaction to any problem is to go to the internet. My first reaction is to go to a user manual or a CD. I'm getting there. I'm really like, I actually have Wi-Fi in my garage now, so when I'm fixing something, I can watch YouTube like Noah. But we call those digital natives. And digital natives don't know a world that's not always connected. And that allows them, I know Steve, you got to see it in school, like it enables a whole new way of thinking. When you take that whole new way of thinking and apply it to a world that has unlimited broadband, where the speed and the latency and the symmetry, like upload and download, with all that is not a factor anymore, that's going to create innovation that is really going to just drive the future. I have a quote here for Susan Crawford, who wrote a book called Fiber, believe it or not. And she says that the hair-thin fiber strands are capable of carrying billions of phone calls simultaneously. Plus, there's also, as you know, a 5G advancement in wireless communications. This will make possible virtually unlimited cheap communications capacity wherever you are, which in turn will give a rise to new business, new transport capabilities, new ways of managing our use of energy, new forms of education and healthcare, and new ways of earning a living, and new forms of human connectedness. By the way, this whole working from home thing was really hard for me in my generation. I want somebody to show up and clock in, and I want to be able to see them, and when something goes wrong, I want to be able to wring their neck. Both of my kids, Josh and Nick, the oldest one and the middle one. So Josh is the one, the father of Miles, and Nick has twins. By the way, we babysat them Saturday for 5 hours. And my wife was like, "Don't you dare try to go home. Don't you dare, you're not leaving." Watching twins is a handful. Anyways, gosh, where was I going? Oh, they've never worked outside of the house their entire career. They graduated from high school and college, got a job, working from home, and that's all they've ever done. The world that most of us live in, where we go to work, unlock a door, turn the alarm system off from Tom, and do our thing, they don't know that. They get up in pajamas with a t-shirt and a Coke and sit at a keyboard and make more money than I made in the first 10 years of my career. And so when you think about how fast things have changed, I've got this quote, and I know we're running out of time. I promise I will be right on time. Promise. I don't know how long the MC and stuff will take, but I will end on time. So listen to this quote. This blew my mind. Uber, the world's largest taxi company, owns no vehicles. Facebook, the world's most popular media owner, creates no content. And Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. Something interesting is going on. And so that's the kind of innovation that unlimited fiber optic broadband is going to bring. And whether you buy it from us, or you buy it from Metronet or Frontier, whatever the case, it only took them 100 years, but they're going to get there. I do believe it's transformational. I think it's going to change our communities. I think it's going to change our region. And it's really been an honor to talk to you all today. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And you can go to Surf Internet and sign up. And I'll answer quick. Do I have time for questions? I know there's got to be a question from an attorney.
I got a two-part question.
Is that allowed? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
It's important. I spent some time before, and we just had our community fired up Comcast, and they did fiber optics. There was a big discussion about that because part of the discussion was next generation may be wireless for the most part, and with fiber optics being outmoded. First question. Second question. You put your lines in the city of ELKR across our yards and so forth. All that is done on city right.
Yep.
The city grants you a franchise to do that. Do you pay the city any money for that?
Yeah, so Thank you, Jack. Two good questions. So first off, if I would have gotten into the physics of the wireless, essentially, there's a law of physics that says the higher the frequency of the carrier, so like RF radio frequency, the higher the frequency, the more bandwidth. But the more bandwidth and the higher the frequency, the shorter the distance. So basically what Jack is talking about is small cells and 5G. And 5G, really in like urban areas like Chicago, you need to have a 5G tower every 200 to 300 feet, or 5G small cell. And so that works great in Chicago and very dense urban areas. It doesn't work very well at all between Elkhart and Wakarusa or Goshen and Middlebury. And so you're absolutely right. There is a lot of spectrum for small cell and there's a lot of capacity for the future, but it's not practical for a big swath of the US. So that's the first. And also, frankly, we're seeing it now with Elon Musk's Starlink. There's only so much spectrum and God's not making any more of it. And so when that channel gets filled, it can only support so many users and so much capacity. And then after that, people's service starts getting degraded. And so that's the same thing with RF. So 5G is a great solution and it works really well in Boston and New York City, where there's lots of density, lots of towers and few people per tower, but it's going to be really a stretch to make it work nationwide. Now, your second question is a little more technical and legal. So broadband under the Telecommunications Act is not regulated like a video franchise. And so we are a regulated utility like NIPSCO and AEP and those guys. But because we don't do video ourselves, we're not regulated under the Franchise Act. So we don't pay ELKR any fee other than building permit fees, just like NIPSCO doesn't pay for gas lines or power lines, etc. Now, in some other places, we do pay fees because of the state regs. Yeah.
First of all, I compared the installation, at least in my little corner, between you and Frontier. You didn't rip up my street.
We did not.
No, but they did.
Because we probably have somewhere, but it goes through it.
Well, what I do notice is that when you want to put that line, that underground, when you put it, is there any thought that you might need an easement to do these things? You're going over private property to get other people's land. I know there's not easements there. How this way, can you just do it and hope nobody calls?
No, actually, we're really, yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. So in the city of Hobart, and I know we got to go, and I'm sorry for keeping you, but if you need to leave, just go ahead and but these are good questions. So in the city of Hobart, when the city built all their roads, they never acquired land for easement. So the roads are all on private property, and the landowners own the middle of the road. And it's a train wreck, really. And so when we do a project like the Elkhart, a big part of what we do is figure out where the right of way is and where it isn't, and make sure that we stay in the right of way. So frankly, there are times where something slipped through the cracks and Elkhart didn't record it right or whatever, and so we may get out of bounds, but that is an exception, not the rule. We are very, in fact, we did a deal in you don't live in Fairfield Farms, right, Scott? No. Oh, that's right. So we built out a neighborhood in Goshen called Fairfield Farms, and there was one road that for whatever reason never got transferred over to the county, and everybody on the end of the road wanted our service, but the person at the front of the road didn't, and because it was a private road, all the neighbors bullied up on that guy until they finally gave us an easement to go across. But we really do pay attention to that, and we try not to get out of bounds with right of ways and easements. I bet in this last year, I've personally written 100 easements with landowners to put a box or an access point on their property. Anything else? Mr. Hanson.
I work in economic development in Elkhart County, and my hats off to Gene Cruising and Serve. They did a wonderful job of presenting their company, the services that they could provide, and they did the same with the communities in Elkhart County. They are top notch, and if you are interested at all in broadband in your house and internet, et cetera, these people have their act together, so my hat's off to you.
Thanks, sure. Appreciate it. That was very kind. I promise I'd be done at 1, so I'll stick around for any other questions. Again, it's really an honor to be here. Thanks a lot.
It amazes me. I bought a house, or I sold my house 2 years ago, and I actually rented a place, but there was no Wi-Fi available. So I've been using satellite for almost 2 years. With that, meeting adjourned.